Well, welcome back to the Intangible Podcast. Really excited to have Rachel Folden to join us today. I mean, we're talking about a four-time All-American catcher at Marshall University. She played professional fast pitch from 2008 from 2008 to 2012 with the Chicago Bandits. First female coach in Chicago history, 2019. How awesome is that, guys? I'm really excited to dive into her story. She also founded the Folden Fastpitch around data analytics and baseball training. I mean, my mind is going all over the place right now. Before I bring you in here, my mind's going all over the place because I'm in the data analytics world as well. And so many questions, I can't even slow my mind down thinking about all the things that you've seen. But as you are right now, you've gone through the Chicago program, and now you also just took a job with the Mets. So we're excited to dive into your story. Rachel, welcome to the Intangible Podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So we just got started here, and we were talking about what you're doing right now, and you're just taking a job with the Mets, and we're going to dive into that. But before we get there, I want to go back to the start. I always like to go back to the journey because I feel like that's the foundation, your upbringing of who we are and what we become. And so let's start there. Take us back to what got you into softball and got you on the track to be now in the big leagues coaching.
I think my mom and my dad will tell you that I came out of the womb just wanting to establish my space in any space that I went into. And I don't think that's really ever changed. Came out with a lot of confidence. And I do credit my parents with fostering that confidence. You know, my mom gassed me up a lot and told me I was the prettiest and the best. So you got to have that cheerleader. And my mom was really good at it. And my dad loved sports. And that was a real connector between him and I. And so it was a nice way for me to connect with both of my parents are divorced. So it was a nice way to connect with both sides of my family, was just having sports in the middle of this kind of hodgepodge family that was put together. And I think another part of it too is, you know, being a gay woman, sports gave me a place to feel like home. And so I think I've always protected that. I've always, you know, sports gives women especially a voice, and it lets you be aggressive, and it lets you take charge, and it lets you do all of the things that sometimes get suppressed in society. And I just felt like home to me.
Yeah, no, that's great. Now we have something in common here, you know, with me being a center. You've been a catcher. And so those are two leading positions on the field, you know. So as you start to cultivate that your leadership style, ultimately, you know, again, that position is a position of communication and leadership. You know, what did that teach you early on about reading people and taking that leadership to, you know, to be able to perform under pressure while leading a group of people?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And, you know, it's funny because I'm in the hitting space now, and I don't do anything really defensive aside from when I'm giving lessons at home in the off season. But I do think that experience did teach me a lot about how to lead people. It made me very vocal. I'm still very vocal. Anyone who works for me will let you know, they'll let you know that. But I've learned just how to, you know, catching is such it's a selfless job, and you have to build other people up most of the time, the pitching staff. Right. And it's a grind. And so I think I learned a lot about working really hard, but also how to build relationships with people and letting them shine instead of always wanting the attention on yourself. Because as we know, I mean, the person in the circle or the person on the mound they're the feature, or the person throwing the football, right? They are the feature position. Right. So we got to make them look good in a lot of ways. Absolutely.
So, I mean, and early on, how did it shape in those aspects of your leadership? How does that show up now today as you're coaching?
It's a great question. I think the level of empathy that you have, you know, it's a very lonely place being on the mound. It's a very lonely place when you give up a home run or you walk three players in a row. That's a very lonely place because the attention's all on you. And I think learning that of how can I help this person in this moment really helped me as a coach. And I also think it gave me confidence to use my voice in that a lot too, because that's encouraged. Yeah. At my position, that was encouraged. And so, you know, both of those things I think really, really helped shape the way that I coach, my coaching style, the ability to listen, take feedback. Pitchers will yell at you. They'll tell you when you're not in the right spot. They'll tell you when you're not calling the right pitch. So I think it helped a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you, again, All-American, you were talented. So when you think about talent, at what point for yourself did you realize that your talent wasn't enough, that there had to be other things that you had to figure out especially when it came to the intangibles? How do I handle failure? At what point for you did you start to realize that now I had to start thinking from a mental performance aspect versus just my talent?
Yeah, I think I learned that really early on. I actually was a terrible baseball player. I was a terrible hitter when I played baseball. I distinctly remember my last Little League season, so I was like 12. I did not get a single hit in the season. And I remember this because I got to the last at-bat of the season and I lined out to the pitcher. And my dad told me afterwards, you almost got your first hit of the season. And so I really was bad at it. I was not good. And I was always defense first. And so when I went back into softball after leaving baseball, I think there was this confidence that I had of, I've done this before, but this is like a fresh start. And now everybody looks like me. So we can talk the same language and we can have these shared experiences with each other. But I learned how to hit way later. I didn't hit my first home run till I was about 16 years old. And then and I'm undersized too. So I'm 5'3". It said 5'5" on my roster, but that was a lie. And so I'm 5'3".
Cleats help.
That's right. Cleats help. That's why the hair is so high on my head now. Just give me an inch or two. But yeah, I'm undersized and I was always very athletic, but undersized and just didn't really know how to play the game until later. So I think going through the struggle early helped me because once I got to college, college was a grind, but it did come easier to me than it did to most. And I will admit that. But when I played professional softball, it was not the case. It was like, I played at a mid-major and all of a sudden I have to hit against Kat Osterman. I have to hit against Monica Abbott and I have to hit off of Sarah Pauly and Lisa Norton, all these pitchers that are just like otherworldly. And I had to learn how to go through the struggle again. But because I had already built that up when I was a kid, because I wasn't the superstar when I was a superstar on my basketball team, but I was not a superstar on my softball team. And so I think that experience, I really helped me learn how to deal with adversity when it came later. Yeah.
Do you think you were aware of that you were working through adversity early on, or was it one of those things that you can look back hindsight right now and say that was my foundation pieces? And the reason why I asked that question is the conversation that we're trying to have around these different intangibles is so that we can start to help young athletes really, understand what they are early on in life and not wait that you have to look back and realize like, now I know what my intangibles are, but those are the foundation pieces that actually helps you navigate through life.
Yeah, I think it was hindsight for me. Yeah. I wish I could say I was present in the moment and saying, okay, this is what's going to happen. I remember the confidence never wavering. I think there's doubt that creeps in, especially when I played at the professional level. There was, and my last 2 years, if I struggled a little, it was like, okay, am I going to get benched now? Am I going to get released? Am I going to get traded? But the confidence was like, hold on, has your ability changed? No. And I do remember having those conversations while playing. But I think in hindsight, what I was really good at was the reframing of adversity of, okay, instead of this is happening to me, poor me, I'm looking for the nearest excuse, or I'm looking for someone to just say, you know what, that really sucks. I'm so sorry you're going through that. I wanted that, but at the same time, I could reframe it in my brain of, okay, this is happening for me, but not happening to me. Yeah. And I think now I try to pass that on to athletes, but I think that was something that my parents just did a really good job of fostering with me is you're going to be okay. And I had no evidence that it wasn't going to work out. Right. So I think I just never lost that confidence. So, but yeah, reframing adversity is something that naturally I've always been good at. I credit my upbringing to that for sure. But also now in hindsight, that's something that I try to reframe to people. I remember having a conversation with a player this past weekend about she she struck out 2 hitters, but then she gave up a hit and ended up giving up 2 runs. And she was like, all she could focus on was that she gave up 2 runs.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to start telling the story in your brain of, remember when I used to struggle with this? Start telling that story now. Like, it's in hindsight.
Right.
I used to struggle with this, and it's something that you can laugh about. And I think I learned that in therapy, to be honest, is reframing things almost humorously or almost super positively. And she nodded, and because the thing was, she's like, I always get to 0-2 and then I can never put the hitter away. I either hit him or I give up a hit. And I said, start telling the story of, look at yourself 2-3 years from now of, remember when I couldn't finish the at bat 0-2? And she laughed, and I said, that's literally how winners think. Yeah. We don't realize it all the time, but that's literally how winners think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you just hit it, is that we as athletes don't realize it, but that's how we are thinking. And so now trying to pass that on to kids so they don't fall into the same traps that we fell into is really important.
Yes.
So, well, no, that's actually, you said a mouthful there, exactly what I was looking for. And I think that someone's going to be listening to this and realize, okay, now I can how do I start to reframe these aspects of my life? So now when we think about your professional career, you had amazing professional career. And then now it's that transition out, which is always challenging for an athlete. But you end up transitioning into a role where you made history, became the first female to become a coach for the Chicago Cubs. Tell me, and tell us what was that moment like for you? Not only being into getting in, working your way into a job that you really had passion for, but also being the first female to do that for the Chicago Cubs.
Yeah, it was very interesting, the wealth of emotions that I felt, or the breadth of emotions that I felt. In a lot of cases, I felt ready, and I felt I needed this in my life at the time. And it was like a welcome change. I could coach, I could be a part of a bigger picture. And I was very grateful for that. And then, and I felt like I was qualified for the position as well. But then there was this other piece of, okay, I am going to be just one of, I'm one of one. There's no one else that looks like me in this role. And that was scary. And I understood the magnitude of the moment in that as well. And so I tried really hard to dance along those 2 lines of knowing that I could do the job well, but also not letting that, holy crap, I'm doing something that no one's ever done before, let doubt creep into my system. And it did at times. And there were times where it was more difficult than others, but I was very grateful to work for the Chicago Cubs. Treated me so well in my 6 years there, incredibly well. I'm very grateful that it was them, because I've heard from other women in the industry that they did not have similar experiences. So I'm very grateful that the right organization hired me. But yeah, there was also an element where I cried because I couldn't believe that I was working in baseball, and all I ever wanted to do was play Major League Baseball when I was a kid. And so this was as close as I could get. Right. And though I wasn't in the big leagues, I had the C on me, right? I wore the same hat at spring training that the big league team did. And it just really made everything a full circle moment, because I remember driving up with getting 2 buckets of balls and a pop-up screen and going out to a field and giving 8 hours of lessons. I remember those days of just grinding it out. And now I was working for a professional baseball organization. So there was a little bit of, I can't believe I get to do this. But yes, it was just a lot of mixed emotions. Yeah. And it also brought up some challenges too, but for the most part, I would say extremely positive.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure some of the challenges was try to earn that respect, as you do in no matter what position, what job you're in, trying to earn that respect. What was the moment like for you? And, your first time in the clubhouse, you're in the cage, that moment where you realize like, okay, they respect me.
Yeah, it's funny. I tell this story often. So my very first day, I worked Instructs in 2019, right before COVID shut everything down. And we had a meeting with he was our defensive coordinator, infield coordinator at the time. And I was a fourth coach. So I was just helping everybody, and I was assigned to infield that day. So we were having a meeting, and he said something, and he cursed, and he stopped what he was doing and looked at me, and he goes, "Do you mind if I curse?" And he looked right at me, and I was like, is this a serious question? That was my response. I go, is this a serious question? And he was like, I don't know. I'm like, it's fine. And then, so that was like my first experience. Right. Yeah. And then after that, I think where I realized that I had moved past that part was there was one specific time where I was tasked with, we had all of these biomechanical assessments that we did, and I had to write a biomechanical assessment for every player in camp. And that included the big leaguers who were early arrivals at the camp. And I remember getting messages back from people saying, wow, you did this, you crushed it. This was a really good job. This is going to help us. And I think it was not, for the first time, it wasn't, oh, you did really good job for a woman. It was, this is really going to help us. And we had moved past the fact that I was a woman now. And that was a special moment for me where I knew I could just operate as myself and not have to go into every room trying to prove what I know and assuming, the worst from people. I think it was just a freeing moment. And yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah. So you let your information of knowing what you know speak for itself. And so that earned respect. And then as I'm sitting here listening to you and hearing the passion and hearing the directness, I would assume you're a direct communicator. You keep it real.
I've been told that, yes.
You keep it real. But as you're keeping it real, you seem like you have this ability to have that piece where people feel comfortable with, leaning in when you're keeping it real. So as you're building that trust, how do you keep it real and also, and keep it honest with players while still earning and gaining their respect?
Players are different, and we have to dance along what their communication styles, what they've gone through in their lives. There's 1,000 different factors. And I think my strength is I am very direct and I'm very honest, but I'm not mean about it. And there are players that need you to be mean about it. And I will admit that is not my strength. It's just not something that it's not authentic. Yeah. So I struggle with it. And I often ask for help in that area. Like, hey, I need you to drop the hammer down to get what we need out of this player. Yeah. And, but yeah, I think where it comes from is just a level of like authenticity. Yeah. I think if you're authentic in general, people gravitate towards you. That is what we want in life, is we want to be around people who are true to themselves and who are authentic. And I've learned that as a kid, I did that no matter what. And I think I learned how to not do that by being in certain spaces. And I think I went back to being my authentic self and just saying, hey, this is what I bring to the table. I'm learning new things every day. I know what I lack. And just being able to be vulnerable and authentic to myself, I think that has been a huge jump starter of my career for sure. Yeah. And
at the end of the day, athletes see right through it. So if you're not, then they're on to the next one. So good for you. That's awesome. Well, I like to do this 2-minute drill. We're going to jump into a quick rapid fire questions here. Very easy. So don't overthink it. All right. You ready for this?
Okay.
All right.
I'm ready.
Your favorite baseball movie?
Bull Durham.
All right. Okay. Song that when you're in the dumps and you feel like you just need that pick me up, what is that go-to song?
Oh my gosh. Pick me up. Can I give you a genre?
Yeah.
I can't give you a song. I am a hip hop and R&B girly to my core. So anything like that will get me going.
Okay. All right. I like that. Your first thought when you hear the word analytics?
Overhyped.
Ooh, yeah. Okay. Tell me more. Well, maybe we had to come back to that.
Yeah, we'll come back.
All right. Your favorite big league ballpark that you've been a part of or been in?
Wrigley.
All right.
Wrigley.
One hitter you love to work with, past or present?
Past or present? I'll give you a professional hitter. Favorite, I will say Moises Ballesteros, because I never had to do anything. I just stayed out of his way.
Love those type of athletes, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Most underrated part about coaching hitters.
Underrated, the friendships and relationships that you build that will last a lifetime. Completely underrated. No one ever talks about it, but the weddings you get invited to, the baby showers, that's it.
Okay. All right. What's harder, hitting a 70-mile-per-hour rising ball or teaching someone to hit it?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. Because I wasn't very good at hitting that pitch. So I would say, but it's really hard to teach too. Equal.
All right. One of the funnest players or coaches you've been around.
Oh, geez. Let's see. Most fun? I'm going to go with Tom Byers. Actually, no, I'm not going to say Tommy. Tommy's awesome. Tommy's great. My college coach, Shonda Stanton. She is the best human I know. She's sneaky funny, and I just love her.
Okay, last one for you. One word you want players to use when they describe you as a coach.
I just want them to know that I cared.
Cared. Yes. Awesome. Well, no, that's great. We're back. We're going to jump back in here. That was a great 2 minutes. I'm going to find clips on all of those that, some of those names that you threw out there, and we'll make sure we have some fun with it. All right.
Cool.
You've built a reputation on blending, the human element of what your skill set is, and then also being able to look at it through the lens of data. You can talk to tech. So how do you take that human element and then also take the tech and explain it to the players that you're coaching and teaching so that they understand it?
I think my experience of coaching youth kids has helped me tremendously. So when I first started getting my feet wet with data and analytics was when I was coaching kids. The oldest kid I had was like 17 years old. Mm-hmm. And so being able to take all of that and then repackage it in a way that maybe a 12-year-old understands or a 14-year-old understands, I think really prepared me for coaching in the minor leagues. Because when you're coaching adults, we think that they're more analytically inclined, but they're not oftentimes. And so being able to explain something simply is a skill that I think I learned by coaching kids. And I've overcooked it with kids. Don't get me wrong. I have 100% overcooked biomechanical data with kids. And I learned, you learn by experience and feedback. That didn't work. But this thing of telling you to just spread your toes out on the ground, that really connected with you. So we're going to do that instead of teaching you how your hip socket works around your back leg and all this other stuff. It's I'm just going to give you a little thing. And you're like, okay. And then that you file that away of that's something I can use later. And I think now in reverse, I used to do it in reverse where I would start at the most complicated and kind of strip it back to the most simple and find where that sweet spot was. I think I go the opposite direction now of starting super simple and kind of working my way into a more complex version of it and then finding that sweet spot for each player. Yeah.
Well, in that same vein, when you think about these little tips that you're explaining to players, when a hitter's in a slump, what's the first thing you go to try to figure out how to help them get out of that slump? Is it physical? Is it mental? Is it both?
I would say it's mostly mental. I think where a lot of players struggle, myself included when I was a player, is we start to think that our ability is not there. And you just have to remind them how good they are. How long did it take you to get this good? That's not going to just crumble after 2 weeks. That's not going to crumble after a month. You're still really good. So now we got to figure out what's getting in the way of you being really good and realizing your talent. And that, I think, is half a mental picture. Sometimes it is mechanical, sometimes it is physical, and it gets in the way, and you try to catch those things. But if a player's swinging too much and all of a sudden they're just swinging way more than they ever did, that's an easy one because you're just like, hey, whatever's going on in your brain, dial it back a little bit, chill out, and now we can just swing a little bit less, but the ability is still there. Or if someone is all of a sudden hasn't hit a home run in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, which happens especially at the minor league level, it's just reminding them how good they are. Maybe they're tired. Maybe they are just not getting good pitches to hit. So there's all kinds of things that we can point to. But I think most of the time when hitters go through a slump, they struggle and they doubt their ability. So I think most of the time we just remind them how good they are.
Yeah, the mental game is so important. So important.
So important.
Now, as you've coaching in AAA, you're coaching guys right on the edge of getting to the big leagues. What makes or break a guy to make that crossover versus the guys who stall out?
I think it's appropriate that I'm on the Intangible podcast because I do think that it is intangible. I just got off the phone with Andy Green with the Mets, and we were talking about the resilience that big leaguers have, and we were talking about how they deal with adversity. That to me is the big separator because the game is hard and it only gets magnified when they get to the big leagues.
Right.
And the gap between AAA and the big leagues is like from here to the moon. It's huge. And so that's why you see a lot of players, they'll go up, even your superstar prospects, and then they'll come right back down because the game just kicks their teeth in. And so I think if you teach them while they're coming up through the minor league system or while they're in high school or while they're in middle school, if you teach them that, hey, adversity is just giving us information about the future. Here's you got to this point and you couldn't get any further. Okay, what do we need to do to get you to the next spot?
Yeah.
And then once you get there, you're going to struggle again. And so teaching them that like struggle is a path to success, not a roadblock to success, I think is really huge. And that's what you see the best players do is they can talk about themselves and how they struggle and they don't feel there's no ego about it. Right. It's just like, yeah, I struggle with this and this is not my strength. And that's what the best players do. They're okay with that versus when you have a player that doesn't understand how to deal with adversity, they get really buttoned up and it's like, well, no, I'm still really good. And I'm only struggling because of this and this. And they don't want to just get vulnerable and just be like, hey, it's okay to struggle. Everyone that you see on TV has gone through it. I promise they've gone through it.
I can promise you that. I've gone through my struggle, especially early on in my career, because you start to compound injuries on top of also now how do I do my job well? And then, special plan center where things are moving so fast. We all go through those struggles and trying to figure out how do I mentally get through those struggles. And I love what you said about reframing all these pieces. And that was my first moment of, working my way through the struggles and starting to learn how to reframe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure you have some great stories around this. So for me, I want to know, a player that you've worked with that bought into your process, bought into what you were doing, and had that breakthrough moment. Is there anything that come to mind for you when you think about certain players?
Oh yeah, I think when I was just working at Folden Fastpitch full time. This was before I got into baseball. I had a player named Paige Carter, and she works for me now. She works on the floor and gives lessons under the Folden Fastpitch umbrella, and she's amazing. But she had a really good career at Western Kentucky. But when she started coming to me as a 12-year-old, and it was only for catching lessons. She already had a hitting coach. She didn't want to hit with me, and her which is fine. So then I give her catching lessons for probably 2-3 years. We build a good relationship, strip her down. She's very guarded, stubborn kid, which are my favorites, to be honest. And then she got to high school and she was like, I want to start hitting with you. And I said, okay. And so I think she had some different ideas of what it took to be a good hitter that maybe her high school coach did not agree with or her travel ball coaches didn't really talk about. And so I think she could come in and be herself around me. Yeah. And I think we really got to a common ground of this is how you're going to dominate now. This is your strength. These are your weaknesses. Attack these, manage these, and we're going to get you to the next level. And we talked through college too. And she ended up having just every year she just got a little bit better. She was never one of the top hitters until about her senior year of high school. And then in college, she really took off. So it was very reminiscent of my journey, right? Yeah. But I think where we had that breakthrough was I'm going to coach you to you versus trying to just put you under the same umbrella as everybody else. And I think she really appreciated that. And then at the professional level, I've had the luxury of having a few players for 3 years. You know, I had Moises Ballesteros, Owen Casey, Kevin Alcantara, and James Triantos. I had them all for at least 2 years, 3 years for most of them. And watching them get to AAA and have a little bit of a struggle and then really take off was really, really helpful for me. But I think the story that stands out is we have the Kevin Alcantara, extremely talented player, 6'6", freak athlete, and is by far the most talented player on the field. And you see it all the time. And he has historically kind of underperformed for his talent level. It's still very good, but it's not what we all kind of envisioned for him, right? Which is big league all-star. And we had a moment this year where he kind of got his teeth kicked in a little bit, and we just sat him down and we said, what do you want to do about it? And for the first time, he kind of had a little bit of agency in his career versus being told what to do. And that is sometimes what happens in baseball, right? You have this prospect, you spend a lot of money on them, and then everyone is telling them, here's the path, here's the path, here's the path. And the player doesn't always have agency in it. And I think for him, he felt like the first time he had agency in his own career. And so I think that really helped him take off. And so, you know, for him, he hit the ball really hard. He just hit a ton of ground balls. And we just kind of said, hey, how do we get you to get the ball in the air more? That's it. Let's just start there. And he kind of gave us some feedback. And I said, okay, now I am going to hold you accountable to the things you said every single day. And we started writing it down, and he would have to check it off. Yes, I did it. And that was a big moment for me of he just needed someone to care enough to do the extra thing for him. And I realized that, like, while other players at this level might want you to leave him alone, Kevin really wanted us to just be as involved as possible. And so we did that, and we got the most out of him. And I was really proud of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is awesome. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking about, as I was doing as you're talking, I'm doing some research on you. And I saw a quote that you said quite often, where my feet are. And to me, it's such a powerful statement, you know, and hearing you talk, what does that mindset mean to you day in and day out when you're working with guys like that?
It's so important. You know, it's so easy to look into the future and say, where am I going to go next? Or what do I have to do to get there? And I think we can't get there unless we dominate where we are right here. And oddly, being a woman working in a male dominated industry, you lose sight of the future just because you're just trying to make sure that you're getting respected where you are. Right. And hopefully by the end of all of this, right, I'm a part of the change that lets women operate and dream big, right? But that was not a path that was laid out for me. I don't have examples of that, right? So understanding that I have to dominate this level, I think has helped me coach the players, like, just dominate where you are. You know, we had a player in in AA in 2024. We moved up 3 guys to AAA at the end of the year, and he did not go up. And I just looked at him and I said, do you think you should have gone up? And I said, are you pissed off? And he goes, yeah, I am. And I said, you should be. And I said, but the only way to get there is to dominate right here. And he was like, okay. And I said, so we just came up with a plan. What do we need to do to get you there? And that only came just from my experience. Because if I would have coached him when I was 28 instead of 38, it would have been a completely different story. I would have been like, yeah, it sucks. We're pissed off. And that would have just fed into that. But it was like, no, let's just dominate where we are. Let's see, here's the things that we have. Here's the adversity that we have. Now how do we dominate this level? But I'm a firm believer in that. And I think if we all do that, we'll get to where we want to go anyway. I don't think there's anything wrong with having goals, but you have to be where your feet are. Yeah.
And I think that's a great line. That's why I think it's so powerful. And when I think about now, you are a visible role model. You're a visible role model, not just for women, but for all coaches. Just the way your coaching style and how you're able to coach where your feet are, dominate where you are. I think a lot of coaches also need to be reminded of that. And so when you're thinking about that for yourself, how do you measure success?
Success, I just want to be able to, when I shut the lights off and go to bed, feel good about the effort that I put in that day. And that's it. And I want people to know that I care about them. I legitimate, it sounds so cheesy and corny, but that's all I really care about is, did I care enough today to do the things that I needed to do? And I come up short often. I really do. And there are times where I put my head on the pillow and I said, dang, I could have helped that player differently, or I could have helped him more, or I could have thrown him one more round, even though I cut him off, right? Yeah. I could have done those things. That happens all the time. But I think that's all I really ask for is just like, do people know that I care about them at the end of the day? And if the answer is yes, then I'm good with everything else. I'm good with failure because at least they know that I tried caring about them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in that caring space, what piece of advice would you give a young athlete, especially young women who want to lean into the space that you're in? What piece of advice would you give them? And also, a young athlete who is trying to make their way through the AAA and just to even get to that place to then try to give themselves a shot to get to the big leagues.
Sure. I think be a good self-evaluator, number one. Understand what your strengths are. Understand what your weaknesses are. Your weaknesses are not as much weaknesses as you think. They could be strengths because you understand where they're coming from. So I think being a good self-evaluator, I meet a lot of young coaches and female coaches that are not good self-evaluators. Yeah. They don't understand what they aren't good at. I think they're very good at telling you what they are good at, but they're not really good at understanding what they're not good at. Right. So I think that's number one. And then the other thing is just be yourself always. Just be authentic. If I've learned anything from working in a male-dominated industry, but also having played a professional sport where everyone looked like me, being yourself always plays. Yeah. Always. Yeah. So being authentic, if you're someone who's a little more dry and quiet, then be that person. Right. You don't have to be outwardly loud. If you're someone who loves to jabber like I do, then be that person all the time. But it's just be yourself. Yeah. It sounds corny, but it's so true.
It's so true. So true. Again, when I think about your journey and you think about, you've been a college catcher and playing professional, what are those things that really keeps you grounded and steady when things are challenging?
I have an amazing support system. I have a great family that I can talk to. I have incredible friends that have watched me go through everything. And I'm talking from career highs, career lows, breakups, divorces, only one divorce, but I have friends and family that have watched me go through everything and they treat me like a normal person. And I think those people are so important to have around you. I just have an incredible support system.
That's awesome. And it's, and especially as the money right now with NIL and all the things that are happening in college sports, it's so important to make sure that you have that foundation early in life before you get to the big dance, because there's a lot of people out there wanting and pulling and nudging you in a lot of different directions. And so you want that support system so that you can stay focused on what the task is at hand, and so,
yes.
So I'm happy to hear that you got a great support system because this business is not easy. It's not easy at all.
It's not easy. It's a grind.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Now, when you think about leadership, I want to go back to that one more time. Now, when you think about leadership, what does that look like now as you're mentoring? From your playing days, now getting to a place from your business and coaching young athletes, what is mentoring this generation of athletes like now, and how do you continue to lean into that love that you do, with knowing that they have a lot at their fingertips with socials, a lot of pressure and a lot of things that we didn't have to deal with. I'm gonna age myself that I didn't have to deal with coming up.
I didn't have to deal with it either. Don't worry.
How are you leaning into the leadership and teaching them how to be better leaders in the role that you're in now?
Yeah, it's tough. It is a different variable that, again, we did not have to deal with when we were playing, when we were young. And I think for me, it's teaching them how to understand what's really important and what they value. And if you can get a player to understand that at some point this is all going to go away, right? But without saying it in a way that's like, your career could end tomorrow. Like, I don't think that's right. It's true, right. But it's like, I don't think that that's necessarily the message we want to put across. But like, what is important to you? Like if you were on your deathbed right now, would you care about how people thought of you as a baseball player? Yeah. And that's coming from someone I've played at the highest level. The come down for me was real. I was the offensive player of the year in professional softball. So I was the best hitter in professional softball in 2011. And I had to go home and sell cell phones at Best Buy for $10 an hour because no one gave it. Can I curse?
Oh,
no one gave a shit. Like no one gave a shit that I was a good softball player. They were just like, okay, I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter.
Right.
And so I had to go through that. And so I think I try to help players understand that all of these people on social media, some of them care about you, but the majority of them do not care about you. They only care about what you can provide for them and what they're consuming at the time. And I think I can actually relate to them a lot. For example, I just got hired by the New York Mets. I made a post about it, and all of a sudden there's like 4 or 5 big articles written. There's 20 more little articles written, and I'm a minor league coach. Nobody cares that a minor league coach gets hired, but because I'm a woman, it's national news, right? I'm a minor league coach. Yeah. Those jobs fly under the radar every day. And so I think I can understand when those things get magnified unnecessarily and come to some common ground of like, hey, that's not really what's important. Mm-hmm, like the external is not super important. It's about, can I look myself in the mirror and be happy with the person that I am? Do I treat people well? Do I love people? Am I sacrificing parts of myself for other people, which I think is a positive thing? Am I a good person? I think that's really all I try to help them understand. And I think that just starts with getting to know them, understanding what's important about them, those kinds of things.
Awesome. Well, Coach, as we start to wind down, there's a couple personal questions I'd like to ask you.
Sure.
One of them is more of reflecting for yourself, reflecting back. If you had to go back and talk to your 17-year-old self, what would you say to her?
Oh, that you don't know everything, even though you think you do. And I think there was a level of ego and arrogance to my 17-year-old self too. I always knew that I thought about the game a little bit differently. I always knew that I thought about the world a little bit differently. And I, because of that, thought I was better than everybody. And I think now I've learned that that's not the case. That just puts me gives me a chance to learn from other people who are very like-minded. So I think what I would tell my 17-year-old self is, slow down, kid. You don't know everything. And how could you contribute to being a better leader right now? Because admittedly, I did not learn how to lead until way later in life. And I wish I would have led my high school team better. I think about this often. I wish I would have been a better leader and pulled people with me. I wish I would have been a better leader in college. I think my coach would tell you I wasn't the most mentally tough person in certain aspects of playing softball at the collegiate level. And I had to learn how to lead later. So I think part of that was just my ego getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I still have one. I think everybody has one. But, just putting that aside and being a little less arrogant, I think would have been very beneficial for me. Oh,
what a great reflection. Thank you for sharing that. All right, my last one for you. Now, again, I always like to end on this. When you go back and you think about your career and you think about your upbringing, that foundation, and where you are now, what are those intangibles that really has made you who you are today?
I still think that there's this thing in my brain that I will always be okay. And I'm not 100% sure on why I feel that way, but I know that I don't have any evidence that it won't be okay. And that's number one. And that's kind of like my North Star is no matter what happens, hey, we're going to get through it and it's going to be okay. But also understanding that while you're going through it, it's okay to not be okay. Yeah. It's okay to struggle. It's okay to feel doubt. I will tell you, during this hiring process, the month of October was probably one of the most difficult months of my professional career because I knew that I was leaving the Cubs and I knew that I was going to go somewhere new. And then all these doubts start to creep in. And I think I sat with them and I let them happen. Yeah. And that's something that I do at this point in my life that I might not have done 10, 12 years ago. So just understanding, okay, hold on, where is this coming from? It's okay to feel like you're inadequate. It's okay to feel like it's going to be really hard. It's okay to feel overwhelmed, but also just remember it's going to be okay. So while you feel this way now, you're not going to feel this way forever because it's going to be okay.
Yeah, we're going to be okay. Wow.
We're going to be all right.
Wow. Rachel, your story is one of, it reminds me of the credibility is about commitment. You've shown composure, you've shown communication, you've shown conviction in the work that you're doing. And so I really appreciate you jumping on here and sharing your story. And hopefully, we always want to touch at least one. And so if this reaches one, inspires one, I appreciate you joining and sharing that story to do that. And so we're going to be cheering you on, excited to come out. I got to get out to a game, check you out and bark at you from the sideline. But really appreciate you joining me on Intangible Podcast.
I thank you. Thank you for the kind words, but also just thank you for everything that you're doing. This is a mouthpiece that can influence a lot of people. So keep going, keep doing what you're doing. It's been a fun journey to watch.
Awesome. Thank you so much.